I was going to do a signal for the guy, and I did, and he just like zooms the music out perfectly. Thank you very much. Wow, I am excited to be here at NDC Sydney. It's a long way away from Sweden, and I get to speak about one of my absolute favorite topics on this stage today, and I mean, that gets me excited anyways. What are we going to talk about? The fact that you can, in the cloud, succeed in new and very interesting ways, and you can fail in all of the old ways, plus some new ones on top of that. You know, when somebody else deploys a new and improved version of the code of your application, do you remember those days when everything fell apart? Basically, it doesn't have to be like that. It does not have to be like that. You just need to be a little bit more aware of what you can do here in this space. So when your logs and your metrics are scattered all over the place, you have to go into a certain database, you have to go and fire up Performance Monitor and try to correlate these things. Basically, you get confusion, you get chaos, and not to mention, you know, also the customer dissatisfaction that you get, right? On top of that. So I want to start by checking the room real quickly. Are you working on projects that are in, let's narrow down to Azure. Working on projects in Azure in production. Yeah, that's a lot of people. I've been asking this question literally on multiple continents for multiple years. And as you can imagine, in the beginning, it was just a few people. This was very obscure. Nobody was really running Azure in production like 10 years ago, right? But now it's, you saw yourselves. It's basically everyone is doing production in Azure. And this space that we're talking about is a hugely overlooked space. Maybe I should ask, how many in here are actively using, you know that you are using, and you're on top of things when it comes to Azure Monitor? There we go. Almost no one, right? That's exactly what I see as a consultant in this space, and it's lovely. I'm, of course, Magnus Mårtensson. You know that from the session agenda and stuff, and you came to this room. I was one of the first Azure MVPs in the Nordic countries, so I've been talking about Azure, working as a consultant in Azure, and doing, you know, things with Azure for more than a decade. I love that space. So I have a bit of history in this, and that's what I'm here to share about today, to tell you about sort of also the history about monitoring in the cloud space. I have another funky title here called a Microsoft Regional Director. It's really, really strange. Don't confuse things. I don't work for Microsoft. I don't have a region, and I don't direct anything. but this title means that I am very close to Microsoft, and I've been working, for instance, very close with the monitoring team. They showed me some previews of what their directions are for the platform, and we've been giving the MVP community gives ample feedback to this process. This is something that's very near and dear to our hearts. If you like this session, send me a lovely tweet. If you have other forms of constructive criticism, send me an email. If you have questions, send me an email. I want to first start by actually drawing attention to this, because it's relevant in this space. I'm going to try to make it short, but I love this, so I sometimes just keep going. This is a Global Azure Bootcamp. Anyone attended a Global Azure Bootcamp? Yes? Yes? Organized one? No? Yes? All right. Define organized. Okay. Disorganized one. So the Global Azure Bootcamp happens once every year, okay? It starts over here in like your time zones in New Zealand and so forth, right? It starts up here in the morning, and in these locations that you see on the map, user groups are organizing one full day events for Azure. And it rolls across all the time zones. All the time zones keep going into Europe, many locations, you know, everywhere. And it ends when, you know, the people in Hawaii start going to the beach. So about 30 hours end to end. And this speaks to relevance. You saw this room. Everyone is doing Azure in production. These represent user groups where it's relevant to run events on Azure. Very interesting. And though the next Global Azure Bootcamp will be announced at Ignite in a couple of weeks, where I will be hosting a booth for the Global Azure Bootcamp. Anyways, so we are going to talk about the reasons for doing good monitoring in Azure. I'm going to give you bunch of stories, history, how this came about, so you kind of know the directionality. We know the history, and I can show you a bit of where we are now, but this, we can probably draw a tangent so you can kind of figure out what the future is going to be in this space. So we're going to focus in on the services in Azure for monitoring. So apparently this presentation is about monitoring. Good. I will start by telling a story. I call this story Old Solutions and Modern Failures. Once upon a time, there was a company. They had this product that they were installing with their customers. On Windows Server, they installed the product. And because they started to get many customers, they were successful. They also needed a partnership model, so partners could produce pieces of code and insert into the product. Lovely. Works brilliantly. So you get a partner ecosystem going, people reselling your product and so forth. Yes, great. Sometimes the developers kind of didn't make things really work. So they came to my customer who owned the product and said, your product is doing some funny thing. So obviously, you needed to find a way to ship the logs to these people, right? So shipping the logs to them so that they could look at the logs. And I didn't tell you this, but there was also another Windows Server instance, classic app server, database server model, where they also had a SQL server running with all the customer data for the application. So it just made sense to put that log data inside of a database on the server because we already had that. Brilliant. That's the obvious place to put it. Then one day, the company decided to fly to the clouds. And I really like that animation, so I'm going to do that one more time. All right, so they're flying to the clouds now with the application. What are they doing? Well, they're doing the first and obvious thing, right? They are rehosting, lift and shifting and rehosting the same application up in the clouds. This is a good first step. Everything is running. Customers are using the application in the cloud. That's brilliant, except all of those blue boxes are VMs, right? So that's expensive. So at this point in the story, I'd like to get some audience participation going. So whenever you see these little icons expressing emotions, why don't you help me out? So let's try this together. All together, just 1, 2, 3. Right? Yeah, that's how that feels. This is expensive, so we can't really deal with that. So what do? Well, all the logs are really just the same, irrespective of the customer. So let's move those over to just one database. That makes sense, right? Absolutely. Simplify. Now all the database servers only have basically a single database on them. Hey, wait. There's a server in Azure for that. We can remove those servers and create ourselves a SQL database pool. Brilliant. I mean, that's way more expensive. Nice move. Yay. Right? Awesome. So all the logs are written to one database. Remember this guy? Yeah. So he's writing code now, and he's writing so many logs to the database because, he's debugging heavily and making sure that all his things really work. You know what's going to happen next. Yeah. That affects all the other applications, all the other customers, just because one guy, right? It's always Dave, that guy, right? And the customers were, what do you think they were? Yeah, they were sad. So that leads to day drinking, because effectively we created a bottleneck, right? So just uncork that thing and get going. And it leads to, everything's falling apart. I think at this point we can stop the story and literally, of course, draw the conclusion that the moral of the story is that you need a modern approach to your monitoring applications scenario for the cloud, right? That's what you need. So when you are using Azure, here's another aspect. When you are using Azure, you are being measured. At the end of the month, you're going to get a very exact bill saying exactly how much you spent, right? So how much you actually consume in Azure is relevant to you. In other words, if you use it, you pay for it. And what's the response if they measure you? What do you do? Well, you also measure you. That's the only way that you can possibly respond to that. The first and last quote you ever have to know about monitoring is by Dr. H. James Harrington. Measurement is the first step that leads to control and eventually to improvement. If you can't measure something, you can't understand it. If you can't understand it, you can't control it. And if you can't control it, you can't improve it. Or as the tailor kind of puts it, you measure twice, then you cut. If I could have an Australian dollar every time a customer created an improvement without knowing the performance before and after, I'd be a rich man. Right? So let's start taking care of your business. The challenges that you have is that you need to understand how to monitor in Azure. And this is a hugely overlooked space, proven by this room as well, right? And don't worry, no one has, we can, not even collectively do we have to feel bad about that. Because this is what I see almost everywhere I go. If I come to a customer and they know stuff in this space, I'd be hugely impressed because most people just don't, right? So no one needs to feel bad, in no way, shape, or form. Then you have to fit your existing kind of logging model and what you are doing to kind of into this space. You have to like redo things. Good part there is that sometimes you just have to like reconfigure your logging system. If you're using nlog or something, it has connectors. You can just reconfigure them and send your logs to the Azure Monitor. Brilliant. And then you need to start doing these alertings and, you know, dashboards for your metrics and all these kinds of things. There's lots of things to do here in this space. So that's what we're doing. So you have your application logs. You have the operating system sending, you know, you would like to have all the metrics, right? If you're running VMs, if you're running instances of things and they have performance metrics and data, you know, perfmon and that sort of stuff. Your Azure resources that you are using, if you're using a service bus, how do you know what the service bus is like? How do you know if your application is slow because of something somebody deployed, you know, not you, God no, but somebody else deployed something and made it slow? Or if it's all of a sudden one day the service bus is not performing the way it should. Or even worse, success can be your worst enemy. God forbid you're successful, because your application worked fine for 100 users, for 2,000 users, but now we have 48,000 users, and all of a sudden things are breaking left, right, and center. That's the worst thing that can happen to your application is success, because it wasn't built for that. Your Azure subscription has a bunch of metrics and things, so who accessed what and who did what, and even your Azure AD tenant has a lot of interesting information about access control and these things that could be very, very relevant to what you're doing. Plus, I'm sure you have some custom sources. So basically, so many data sources, so much data, and so tall the various silos. These things don't go together, right? Your metrics are over there, your logs are over there, and it's just a mess. That makes you crazy. I don't even know how to, right? That's where we are now. And in Azure, the kind of solution, the answer to this is the Azure Monitor. That's what they are building. And this is a kind of a first picture they had saying this is a unified monitoring model thing. And this was at Microsoft Ignite last year that they presented this. And I was, like I said, working with these people to give some input on what that shape should be like. So what they did last year was they showed that, well, we now have Azure Monitor, and look, we have basically copy-pasted all of the documentation for these various services into this space. So it kind of starts and ends, or the suggestion is, the intent here from Microsoft is that Azure Monitor is your place. So when you have all your things, all your logs, you want to be able to push them into the Azure Monitor. And overview of that is this. So you can see here that your metrics, your information from your running servers or whatever you have, and all the logs that you produce either from the stack you're running on or from your own code, all that stuff is somehow inserted into Azure Monitor, ingested in there. And then you can see, I'm sure many of you, application insights, anyone? You know what? Yeah, that's the one which is the most known in this space, application insights. It's in there. It's kind of in the umbrella now, and log analytics is another one. People kind of know the name OMS, and you should forget that name because it should never have been in Azure at all, but just because, you know, the infra side of things, the IT department, they knew OMS, and kind of what Microsoft did was then take OMS and put that in Azure, saying, hey, OMS is here, and now they kind of renamed it to Log Analytics, and literally now it's just called Logs. So metrics and logs, that's what you have. And audience participation. If you want to browse over to NDC Sydney 19, just for fun, in case you want to send me a lovely message, what happens when you go there, I'm clicking the link myself here. Actually, from PowerPoint, it takes a while to start the browser. I have no idea why. And then I come to this application. And so this application, as you can see, is kind of, it's not the brilliant application, but it works, it's kind of broken. So it works really well for the demo scenarios. On purpose, there's a 404 on the page here. There's an about page, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And then there's an ability for you to send me a message. Magnus, on stage, live. Yay. All right, sending that. So you can send me a message if you like, just for fun. And so that's what we have. All right. So audience participation, always fun. So that's going to give us some information from application insights, right? The application is running, and there are some issues with the application, and I'll show you that later. When there are issues with your application, one really important thing is to do alerting. And you can find alerting inside of all the services that are in Azure. In fact, here's the thing. That used to be implemented by each and every team in their own way. So the app service guys had alerting implemented in their way, and service bus people in their way. And of course, that's not practical, that people are reinventing the wheel and kind of implementing it slightly differently for every service. So that's one of the things that Microsoft kind of pulled out of everywhere and inserted into just one place. So whenever you click on the alerts functionality anywhere in Azure today, you're going to go to the same functionality, always. And so just to sidestep slightly there, in Azure, versioning, I'm sure you know, but just to be clear, just to level set, we don't call it beta, production, and deprecated anymore. We haven't done that for years. Instead, kind of we have, I don't know, the current stuff is just whatever is in existence, right? But beta is always known as preview, right? So it's a preview, it's beta. It basically is beta, but they use the word preview instead. Means it doesn't have an SLA. That's where you need to think, are we actually doing the right thing using this in enterprise scenario production setting? Maybe, maybe not, right? But it's up to you. It's a preview. It can change. Things can happen. And things have been known to change in the previews. So, preview. No SLA. The other end of the spectrum is classic. Kind of feel you need to pop your hip there. Classic, right? It means old. Don't get me wrong. It means you shouldn't be here. If you see that in any of the services that you are using, that's an indicator that you should be somewhere else, just to be clear, all right? So we have preview and classic, and in the Azure portal, I will show you later, specifically in the alerting space, there's a lot of movement right now. Kind of makes it a little bit difficult. So, all right, let's go down the list. You have all these higher level experience, the insights, there are VM insights, they are in preview, container insights are also in preview, networking insights are not on the screen here. They're not in preview, I think. The application insights, obviously not in preview. And then when you have all your insights, experiences, gathering all the data, taking all the things in, the next thing is then to begin to analyze them. There's a metrics explorer for it, and there's some log analytics that you can go into and start searching your logs and getting all the things out. So remember Performance Monitor. We all love Performance Monitor. Come on. How many times? Remote to the machine, open Performance Monitor. When you have 80 of those or 200, it's not really practical. So you can think of the Metrics Explorer as remote perfmon. Okay? You install an agent on the machines, which collects all the same data, all the data that you get from perfmon, and puts it over in one space for you. So you have many servers, you can collect all the data, you can view your metrics. Now that you have gathered and start to analyze all the things, you want to start building the dashboards. I like all of these. your Azure dashboards and various views, Power BI is brilliant here. So you can pull data from your logs and metrics and all the things into Power BI, and you can do Power BI embedded thing and create a dashboard internally for the people, the bean counters and the Excel people, so that they can show how you can show internally how the application is doing, how many new users and how many orders and all the things. You can pull that in and create powerful dashboards with Power BI. And of course, you also might want to respond to certain things. A customer of mine had a service. They knew that it was a memory hog. They knew that it was leaking over time, and it's just annoying, but they only had a few users on it, and it wasn't really practical to rebuild it. So they literally made, whenever the memory consumption goes over 80%, reboot the VM. I mean, it works. It's not a perfect solution. It is a workaround, but it's a pragmatic workaround for this scenario. But you really want to be able to sleep well at night and know that your application will auto-scale and it will alert you if something really, really bad is happening. All the data that goes into this space, machinery, this service, these groups of services, that's your data. You can integrate with anything. You can pull data in from other sources, other vendors, Splunk, what have you, or you can export data from here out. All this data is yours. If you want to take all that data and back it up somehow, if you need something for compliance or I don't know, audit logs and stuff like that, you can back it up. It's your data, right? So it's open and you can just connect to anything. So that's sort of the overview of that. Let me show you that in the Azure portal as well. So here's the Azure portal. And for the purpose of these demos, I deployed a bunch of resources into one resource group. It's not something that I normally do or even recommend, but I deployed NDC Sydney 19, and inside of that, is it large enough? That's pretty large, yeah? Okay, slow internet. It's Australia after all. I knew I'd get a laugh from that. So, bunch of resources, couple of web applications, VM, and some things are just bunched together in a resource group. It makes it easier to demo, and there's actually a good reason for doing this later. So that's what we have. And Azure Monitor is this thing here, the thing that looks like a little speedometer. Okay, that's Azure Monitor. So you go into that and you get this page. Now, first thing I want to call out is this getting started page here. If you haven't done much in here and you want to know how to get things going here for our company, what should I do? Go here, click on all the things, spend, half a day. It'll probably be some of the most valuable time you have spent learning things in a long time. This page is one of the best getting started pages for any service that is in Azure currently. And also additionally, I think that should be somebody's job inside of your company to go in here frequently and see what is going on. They have a feed for news in this space here, so you can see what is happening. And also, of course, obviously, all the tutorials and demos and the videos. Spend some time here. You will not regret that if you need to step into this space. So you can clearly see here on the left that we have all these things that I mentioned from the overview slide. There's the alerts in here, the metrics and the logs. Service health I didn't mention all that much. Service health is very important as well. Not a big topic in this presentation, but in case something is off with your application, wouldn't it be nice to know if that is a problem in the Azure platform right now with databases or whichever service that you are using? That's where you go into service health and find out if any of the services that I am currently using is currently having a problem in Azure, in the Azure platform. That's going to happen. There is an SLA, which also means that, very small percentage of the times there might be an issue or a bit of a hiccup, right? So when your customers are contacting you, being angry that your service is slow or not working again because stupid application, it's your fault. I'm not saying pass the blame per se, but just to be able to explain to customers and say, well, we are terribly sorry for the inconvenience. Right now, the Azure platform is having an issue with the databases, and we are currently on top of the situation, monitoring all the things, and we will resolve it as soon as we can. There's not a lot we can do when the Azure platform is malfunctioning for us. Just to be able to say that to a customer helps so much. It really does. Okay? And of course then, as you can see here, we have all of these application insights and all of the insights here. Like I said, the network insight and the container stuff, that's not in preview anymore, but the virtual machines one is in preview. So you can have all kinds of insights, higher level kind of experiences where you can configure cool things for your applications. We had the application insights before, right? All the things that you run in Azure really have diagnostic settings. And so you need to figure out how to configure diagnostics properly for the things that you have. Now, it doesn't mean go into each one of them and turn all the diagnostics on for everything. You should be checking the diagnostics on the things that you care about, right? Figure out if the diagnostics level should be verbose or only informational or whatever it is that you need to have. But you should know how to tweak those knobs and turn it off and on and you know, when you need them. When there's an issue, maybe turn on or amp up the diagnostics a bit for a while. And then this also actually connects to usage and estimated costs and all that space. How much is the consumption actually costing us? And that's a big other area which we do not have time to cover within the space of 1 hour. But it's a very big and important piece so that you can start to correlate, obviously, how much consumption translates to how much money, right, over time. That's, of course, very, very important for your business. It's a brilliant presentation yesterday about doing that with spend ops for the use case of running Cosmos DB instances. You should check that presentation out as well. And also there is advisor recommendations. Have anyone checked out the advisor recommendations? Several. Very nice. Well done. So in a whole separate space, there is something called Security Center. That has a lot of dashboards showing you what, you know, current patch level you have in case there's a critical security related issue. They show all these numbers of things in there. We're not going in there for this presentation. And we're also not going into the advisor recommendations here as well. But this is also another place, you know, Security Center and this place. It should be within your company, you know, you are running production things in Azure. Somebody should have the job to go in here and translate the recommendations in here into work items for your company, okay? There can be all kinds of cost benefits, obviously things like the reserved instances for VMs and databases and things show up there as recommendations. Other things such as when they change the pricing model for log analytics, they would have a recommendation saying, you know what, if you change your current pricing model to this new pricing model, as far as we can tell from the way we've analyzed how you use the service, you'll probably save about 30% on this service if you make that change. And I mean, somebody should go in there and check that and just work that list downwards to 0. There shouldn't be any unhandled items in here. Basically, that's a sacking offense, if you know what I mean, right? If you want to be professional about how we spend, we should definitely spend time in there. So, you know, all in all, we have all these things in the Azure Monitor that we need to work down. So once you have gone through all the videos and tutorials and things, you should definitely click into each and every one of these and try to just figure out what are they about, what are they doing, how will they help me. Good. So that's the. There's one more thing, right? We need to go back to the application as well. So, application insights wise, we had the application, right? And some of you maybe sent me some information. So let's go and figure out. Let's go to the application insights. Now there are multiple ways you can go into it. This goes into applications insights from sort of the top down. And I currently have only one application insights resource running in this subscription for the purpose of these demos. I could have gone to the web application and gone in through there as well, another entry to the same space. But you can see here that we have plenty of failed requests, you know, the 404s and the internal server errors that I was having in my application. What I want to do is go down to the log stream here and see which kinds of, I think it's the trace. Do we have any trace requests here? We do. Looking good. you know, here's your messages, right? That's the stuff that you sent me right now. So I took those messages and traced them into the tracing stuff. And just within, and it's been there for a couple of minutes already. I mean, it takes, you know, a few minutes for the log data to show up. No matter how much data you throw at this thing, you're not going to be able to max that out, this service, okay? So I can see all the trays, I can see all these failures, you know, what's happening inside of my application here. Oh my goodness, so many exceptions. What's all this about? Oh no, we'll drill down into that and see that there's an exception and somebody is logging the message, uh-oh. Right, so that's the internal server error that I have put inside of my application just to show you guys that, you know, I get all the stack trays and all the things here, right? So, and I think, you know, several of you raised your hand. You had already seen Application Insights. It's the one that's been around for the longest time. But you can do then the same things with, if we go back to Monitor, you can do the same kind of things with your virtual machines, for instance, right? Your virtual machines, I have one running, and I have installed all of the monitoring stuff on that machine. So I see that it's here, my Windows virtual machine. If I want to check the performance on that box, I get remote perfmon. Right in there under performance, I can see, of course, this is a server not doing anything, so the CPU utilization should be, well, basically what every CPU is on every server on the face of this planet. Almost slim to nothing, right, in utilization. That's why we do the cloud. So yeah, here we go. Here's the server that is running, the memory consumption, the bytes send rate. There's some networking stuff and the logical disks and all the things that we have in here. All right, aggregate charts and more things. Another thing that I really like as well, and this is going to be a simple picture right now. Oh, wait. I need to select my machines. Let's go in from the other direction instead. Makes it faster. So I'll go in here to my VM. And so now I'm approaching monitoring from the focus of just one thing, right? From one machine in here. And in here, there's a monitoring section as well. So this monitoring section is the same. This is surfacing the same kinds of things that we saw from the other monitoring perspective, but that was for all things. This is just for one thing. All right, so if I click on that and I go to the map, it's going to show me the VM. And moreover, it's going to show me lots of interesting facts about this VM. What operating system version am I running? What's the CPU on that? How much RAM do I have on the thing? And you know, I've even installed the health agents here. They should be saying, yeah, green, your server is running. Yep, awesome, it's up and running. And you know, all the properties on this Azure VM are surfaced through here. And I can see what processes are running on my server. All the things that are actually running on my server right now. And we can also see here, oh yeah, brilliant. I have ports on this thing going to the internet. And here we can see lots of friendly people that really want to communicate with me are trying to connect to my server. Isn't that brilliant? So friendly. I love the internet. Yeah. So that's, you know, all the bots and all the crawlers and all the port scanners and all the things, all the Russian machines and, yeah, are all trying to, you know, reach out and interconnect with me. Just lovely. So this is one VM. Imagine having many VMs and you get this map of things and you see which server is communicating to which and, you know, which ports are things happening on and so forth, right? So you can see all the things from here. So that's the remote perfmon, the metrics stuff, and the application insights, all the logs and all the metrics and all the traces. And you can imagine, I mean, there's plenty of more. We do not have the time to cover all of that here. There is no way. There is so much in there. And a really good thing about all these things is that whatever you find inside of your data, whatever you find anywhere inside of this, it's your stuff. Like I said, if you can pull any kind of metric, any kind of log into this space, you can always go and create an alert for it. So if the CPU goes above a certain level and that's a bad thing, you can create an alert for that. And so I did. I created, to ensure that I get alerts, I created a high alert and a low alert. And so basically, I'm always going to get either one of these things here. So I'm getting a bunch of alerts. And this one is the one saying that oh, this is just checking if my site is up and running. Brilliant, it is up and running. And this other one should be then saying that my application is cool, as in the CPU is not doing much, right? And there's, the site is cool, right? So, very cool site. And that means that the CPU is below 50. Well, okay, cool. It's going to be below 50 all the time. But anyway, you can see at least something happened here just now when you guys were browsing to it and so on, right? So here's the alerting stuff. And so inside of this, for anything that you want to create an alert for, you can, and here I have the ones that I have created for the purpose of this demo. And in here, now, pay attention, right? First of all, view classic alerts, right? You have the classic alerts there. Things are being deprecated. And then it says here, classic alerts have been retired on August 31, 2019. Automatic migration of classic alerts will be performed over the next few weeks. Learn more and so forth. This space is moving all the time, right? And you need to stay on top of that. Because if you had some alerts installed, odds are they may be classic by now. So classic means old. It means you shouldn't be here. And so whatever you find in your data, anytime, anywhere at all, it's your stuff. You can create an alert for it and take appropriate action. And in this case, I'm just simply sending emails to an action group of recipients. So this is the definition: what resource, what is happening when the CPU is so-and-so, what action should I take? And then I have the action groups. And action groups are things that you can create. And then you can have some action. And this some action can be all kinds of things, right? So really all we ever needed actually was the webhook. If you can send a notification to a webhook whenever a certain condition occurs in your application, that's brilliant. You could do whatever from there. But this is also integrated with all kinds of things. As you can see, you can get emails, text messages. Voice is interesting. I've never tried it. I need to try that sometime. Is that somebody phoning you from Microsoft support? I don't know. Probably just an automated voice, but still, you can get a phone call when something happens with your application. So there's really no excuse. And this, like I said before, success can be your biggest enemy, right? And in terms of you're running your application and all of a sudden it's successful and alerts start to fire, it might mean that you maybe need to tune the consumption level, turn up to one more instance because you're being successful. It's brilliant. But it also may mean that you might need to go and fine-tune the sensitivity of these alerts. Because, you know, the really, really bad thing, you go into a... God, you go into a customer and you start looking at their dashboards and you see like a blinking red light in the corner in there. And you go like, I just cannot not look at that. What is that blinking red light? Oh, yeah, that keeps blinking all the time. We've just stopped paying attention. So really, you have to ensure that you're not getting too many notifications on all the things, right? You have to make sure that you have appropriate alerts, because otherwise there is no point. You can't see the forest for all of the trees. So this is a fine-tuning experience that you have to keep doing forever, right? And that doesn't have to be a big burden. It is going to be something that helps you once your alerts are tuned to the appropriate level. All right. So let's see about some more slides. Now, one more thing that I wanted to talk about is sort of the backstory to the Azure Monitor here. I told you that the MVP community, you know, myself included, and all the other people have been given ample feedback. Remember the stack of data, all the silos of data that we had, you know, metrics over there, your logs in a database over there, and there's something coming out of your Kubernetes cluster or whatever you're running, also logs from the stack and all these things. What we gave as feedback, really what we wanted from Microsoft is give us a single pane of glass experience so that we can walk up to a dashboard and say, hey, my application, the things that matter to me, how is it doing? What's going on inside of the application right now? And there is something that Microsoft is working on in this space, another preview. So we go back to the Azure portal again. We go to we start from the top. No, I don't want to have those edits. And we go to our resource group. And this is the reason why I deployed all the resources to the same resource group. It's not normally something that I would do. I wouldn't probably mix VMs and web applications and all things in just one big pile. You can, it's not illegal, but it's just not practical, right? But here are the things that I have in a big pile. And you can see here, Insights Preview, right? I mean, it means no SLA, but it means still it's there. It's something is there. And that's something that is there. It's all turned black. Now it's back. Yeah, cool. Is kind of a single pane of glass experience for a resource group. All the resources in this group and all the alerts and things kind of happening around this thing. And as you know, you recall that I had alerts on my web application because it was not behaving the way it should. And intentionally, I don't build applications that way normally. But here I can see the alerts firing for my application. And I can see that I have applications that are installed. You know, for instance, the server here is healthy and it has the Insights engine activated for it. If it didn't have that, for instance, here I have an app, another web application that I haven't configured or done anything with. I can actually, from in here, go in and enable Azure Monitor on that thing, or create some kind of an alert from in here. I can take action from this dashboard, from this single pane of glass. I can view the metrics and all the things on this application as well. So this is supposed to be an actionable live dashboard with the things that are relevant to you. It's currently a preview, currently for resource groups. The tangent of that, the future of that, is obviously to make that, you know, I want to pick the resources that make sense in the context of this one application or whatever is relevant, and I want to, you know, I don't know, by tag or something like that. I can envision that they would be using tags for that. So given the tag application foo, show me all the things in just one place, and if ever there is an alert, if ever there is something, you know, a Azure platform health issue, the CPU is overloaded on this thing because some partner wrote some crappy code and it's killing the memory on the thing. You know, whatever it is, it should be alerting. It should be showing here in just one place for you. It's preview. It's directional. I like the direction. I hope they get there really fast. We'll see if they give us any progress on this and now in the upcoming Ignite conference in a couple of weeks. It's been a year since they kind of announced this stuff, and it's still preview. No promises, and I'm not disclosing any NDA information for that matter, honestly, because usually, oftentimes, it takes about a year from preview to production. So, you know, we'll see. But certainly the story doesn't end here. The monitoring space will continue to evolve, and it is your job to keep on top of it. And make sure that you are able to, as an organization, take full advantage of the wealth of services that are in here. Final thing to talk about today, and then I'm going to start rounding off with questions and answers kind of thing, is the Azure Data Explorer. Do you know what the Azure Data Explorer is? I think maybe some of you do, but you don't realize that you call it the Azure Data Explorer. It was called Kusto. So Kusto is a custom-built database to ingest massive amounts of telemetry, your logs, your metrics, all the things just coming wildly fast in huge abundance into this service, and ingest and store, and then very quickly index. You know, the metrics goes off in one direction and shows up in the metrics. You know, you get remote perfmon very, very quickly, and the logs are indexed really quickly. You saw me filtering down in the logs for a trace. I could have also begun searching in those logs and find specific things, right? Custo is the database built for that. So it stores massive amounts of data and then indexes it, and it gives you a query language that you can then access to find anything inside of your logs. And then they gave it the proper name, which was Azure Data Explorer. I don't know, but whatever. There's not much to do about it. You can go to Azure. This is actually in the marketplace. You can go and create yourself. Maybe the logo has changed since I made this screenshot. But you can go and create yourself your own Azure Data Explorer. And let's see, I'll jump a couple of slides here because the interesting bit is, why would I use it? If you have a really big IoT scenario, if you're troubleshooting something, running some big diagnostics things, maybe then you need your own Custo. However, be aware, when you provision this, you will provision a cluster of services, or sorry, server instances that you will be running and paying for. So it's an expensive service. When you are running application insights, or you are running log analytics inside of Azure Monitor, that is one tenant in a multi-tenant environment of Custo. But you could run your own in case you need it, right? So in case you need it, you won't be needing, this service for yourself. But actually, so I had fun with this a while ago. The slider thing, unfortunately, they've changed it now. It was so cute. So when you provision, you start with a minimum of 2 servers, right? And then you can provision any number of servers. These are now logging servers. They're doing nothing but logging your stuff and making it available for you to search, using the RAM on the machines, using the disk on the machines, and using all kinds of longer-term storage services underneath the covers for your benefit. And so you could pull the slider really far on how many instances you would be running here. And I made a GIF of that. So you could go 100 instances, 200, 300, 500, 600, 700, 800 instances, 900, all the way to 100. Because the UX didn't allow for 1,000, so it rounded down to 100 really quickly there. But yeah, so imagine running 1,000 servers, of course, just doing your log analytics. It's obviously ludicrous. My kind of takeaway here, if we're starting to wind down, and I like this anti-pattern. It's something that, over the years, this is of course Wile E. Coyote, but there's an anti-pattern of running something in Azure or migrating to Azure or using the cloud. And the anti-pattern is when you're running your own servers, your own product on the ground, those are the guys paying your bills, right? You need them. You need those guys who are currently your customers, are paying the bills, and your company is going to the cloud. So they're trying to build, you are trying to build this new lovely service in the cloud. And all the while, you're kind of like dragging one foot behind you, right? So you got this experience of you're hanging there in limbo. You don't really know if you're going to fly or if you're going to fall. Really cool thing about this space, though, is that you're able to take many of these monitoring services, application insights and the VM monitoring services, and actually run them on your on-premise instances as well. It doesn't matter where you run them, as long as they can send the data to, Custo, to the cloud, to the Azure Monitor. And I've seen so many times companies struggling so hard with having the old customers, the good ones that pay your bills, and then wanting to have more of the new customers, and there's a big fork in the road, right? There's a big fork in the road and a big fork in the code where you have to fix the same things in multiple places, and it's just a pain. So just as a general piece of advice, be bold, and after a while, make some hard decisions. Maybe start to be more forceful in migrating your on-premise customers and saying, sorry guys, we love you, you pay our bills, it's brilliant. However, right, you have to start moving now. And then maybe give them some nice treats. We'll give you a low rate to begin with and all that kind of things. So before I round off, we have about 10 minutes for questions. Any questions, thoughts, personal attacks? Yes? Of Azure use cases? Yeah. Well, so some of the use cases I've heard is when you have these really, really big amounts of telemetry coming, like if you're instrumenting the next model car with hundreds of sensors and you're running a real test or a jet engine or something like that, or if you have a really, really big IoT scenario, you're sending telemetry from everywhere for some reason into these things, right? You have to have a really big data scenario for the purpose, for that to be valuable, because when you are running log analytics, it's literally the same thing. You would interact with your data inside of your own instance of Kusto the exact same way that you would interact with your data inside of your instance of log analytics. The instance of log analytics would be much cheaper, and it can take a lot of data. It can take a big pounding of data, right? If that is not enough for you for a given scenario, then you go and provision your own Kusto cluster. But otherwise, I mean, hardly anyone would ever need to do that. But it's kind of curious still to understand what's underneath there and what did Microsoft have to build, this whole new service, to be able to service this big scenario of the Azure Monitor. Great question. Thank you. Yes? App Insights has a data retention of 90 days by default, yes. Well, it's based on the same data retention stuff that you can get from log analytics, and I can't recall, but I think you can crank it up pretty far, like a year or something, if you really want to. You'll be paying for storing the data. So rationally, you might be collecting some subset of views from all the data. Just let all the data expire. Collect a few subsets, some views that are important to you, maybe some audit trace, audit logs, and some stuff that's important for you to keep, and maybe export that to somewhere else, probably, right? And in almost every scenario, that data is never touched again, and nobody cares, but you kind of have to have it. And I probably don't advise you to collect tons of data and then crank up the log analytics to the maximum amount of retention, because I think that's going to be a little bit expensive. Depends on how much data you're collecting, obviously. Yeah, but so all the data is yours. You can pull it out and do whatever you like. Yeah, good. Yeah. GDPR, data stuff, yeah. Yeah. From a GDPR perspective in analyzing the data inside of log analytics? Yeah, right. No, I honestly don't know the answer to that question. That's a great question. Of course, you need to be careful on what data you are putting into that system. And it actually used to be the case when this stuff started, when Application Insights was really young. The first and only location that you could have your Application Insights data was in the US South Central, something like that, right? The only location you could run an instance of Application Insights. And obviously that was a no-go for a lot of companies, saying, why are we sending our telemetry data to, across the pond to the big country in the West? It doesn't make any sense. And now you can run log analytics and Application Insights instances in many regions. So the progress is kind of there. And in terms of GDPR specifically, in terms of the data put into there, I really don't know the answer to that. Obviously, you will have your custom logs, and all the things that you write to the logging system might be subject to GDPR or any other types of compliance. It's a great question, though. I wish I had a really good answer. All right, somebody over here had a hand up? Yes? Does App Insights record? Yeah, New Relic is a competitor, yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Yeah, it's a valid point, yeah. So if you are if you are requesting URLs, URIs, if you're browsing to your application and there's information in the query string, that could also be subject to GDPR. And yeah, that would be stored in here. Absolutely.
Can you write a trigger to strip it out?
Yeah, I don't think you can write a trigger to strip it out.
That's what you can do in New Relic.
Interesting. That's a good. I'll take that suggestion back to Microsoft. Yes, I'll do that. No, I definitely will, because it's an interesting, very valid question. So, New Relic is one of the competitors, Splunk, etc., are competitors in this space. And interestingly, and I actually personally asked this question to Scott Guthrie, saying, you know, when they started talking about application insights some years ago now, application insights is not young anymore. You know, I said, what about Splunk and New Relic and all the other things that are already out there, Google Analytics, for Christ's sake, you know, all the competitors that have been in this space for years. Are you saying that the application insights is going to compete with them? You know, come on, really? And the short answer is yes, because Microsoft have to have this story as well in their platform. They really have to have it. And as you can see now, you know, years later, the Azure Monitor, you know, application insights is just one wee little piece at the corner of this thing, right? There's lots of more. And so, yeah. All right, cool. 5 more minutes. We probably might have time for a couple of more questions towards the very end. And afterwards, of course, I'll be here for the whole day today, and I'll be here tonight for having drinks and beer. So really good way to get my attention is to bring a beer. and we'll have a conversation. But anyway, what you need to do, you need to monitor and alert on all of your logs and your metrics. That's really, really important. The stuff that I have been showing you here needs to be somebody's job in your team to do this. It speaks to this whole, I didn't even mention the whole DevOps production lifecycle thing, you know, when data comes in from production back to a work item for the team kind of thing. But I think you know most of that anyway. I think you're a brilliant bunch of audience here. One other really, really important kind of just, here's what you need to do. Least privilege, please. I cannot tell you how many times that I have had customer scenarios where they're running something in QA, moving it to production, and it doesn't work in production. And they start searching high and low and wide and far for what the reason is for this thing. And then they realize that somebody was testing something and just changed the setting somewhere so that QA was no longer the same as production. I mean, it's not super related to the monitoring piece. It's just a random piece of rambling, ranty advice towards the end of my presentation. This is one of the biggest sources of issues for any application that I have ever seen. And that is solved by not giving people access to change things in QA and production, okay? Only computers do that, or, you know, the admin of the thing, not the entire dev team, okay? Just stop doing that, remove access. They don't have to have the access. And when you talk to dev teams, when you talk to people, they don't even want to have the access. It's just, you know, it's so much easier if you just make everyone owner of the subscription, right? So much easier. No, just no. Another one, which is kind of less obvious, and that speaks to monitoring again. The best way to ensure that someone is keenly interested in the monitoring situation of your application is to make them responsible for the budget, the consumption of the application, okay? So you figure out how much it costs and you set a budget. And then, right, later you go and check that budget and say, hey, you're going over budget here. That person, you know, or team, whatever, is very interested in monitoring, because they need to be able to say if they have deployed a new version of the code, which is currently, you know, just adding more resources, consuming more memory and CPU, and you're scaling out to more instances, and that's why it's costing more money. Or if you are, again, being successful, and you have many more customers now, and therefore you might need to adjust the budget. This is the single best way to actually make sure that you have monitoring in place. Somebody needs to be responsible for this thing. In case you haven't had enough, I'm going to completely self-serving tell you that I also have a workshop that goes into this over the course of like 3 days, where you go hands-on with this and learn all about it. And in case you want to know more about that, just send me an email, and I'll come and deliver that for you. Yay! I should have a smiley on that one. All right. You have been brilliant. We are almost on time. Do stick around, and I think you can all figure out who I am in this picture. Thank you very much for your attention.